He walked into the shelter and chose the one dog everyone else feared. Everyone warned him, don't go near cage 19. The dog had bite records, deep scars, and a warning sign that screamed, do not approach, aggressive. No one dared go near his cage. They called him a monster. But when he looked into the dog's eyes, he didn't see danger. He saw pain. What happened after he brought that monster home stunned everyone, including himself. The shelter was buzzing with activity that morning. Children pressed their noses against kennel glass, couples cooed over puppies, and volunteers bustled through the narrow corridors carrying food bowls and leashes. But one section remained eerily quiet. A long hallway, dimly lit and noticeably colder, led to a single cage at the very end, cage 19. No one ever stopped there. No sign saying, adopt me, hung on its gate. Just a thick padlock and a small, handwritten tag that read, do not approach. People whispered about the dog inside, stories that sounded more like urban legends than shelter gossip. They said he had attacked 3 previous owners, sent a trainer to the hospital, and once bit through a steel leash. Staff called him Raise. Not a name someone gave a pet, but a label meant to warn. Most volunteers refused to enter his wing alone, and even seasoned handlers spoke of him with a nervous laugh. That one, they said, was born broken. When Alex walked through the shelter doors for the first time, he wasn't looking for a purebred or a puppy. He wasn't even sure why he had come. Maybe it was the silence in his home after his wife passed, or maybe it was something deeper, some emptiness he couldn't put into words. He walked past yapping beagles, wagging tails, even a golden retriever pup that licked his fingers through the gate, but none of them felt right. He was about to turn around when he heard it. A low growl, like gravel rolling beneath concrete. It came from the far end of the hallway. Every instinct told him to ignore it, but his feet moved anyway. As he approached cage 19, the fluorescent lights above flickered. There, in the shadows, stood the dog. Massive, muscular. His coat was a patchwork of scars, his ears clipped, and one eye clouded white from an old injury. He didn't bark, he didn't retreat. He just watched, like he was waiting for something, or someone. A shelter worker spotted him and rushed over. Sir, please don't go near that cage. Her voice was tight. That dog isn't up for adoption. He's dangerous. We're considering other options. Alex didn't ask what those options were. He already knew. In most shelters, other options was code for a one-way trip. But he didn't look away. And neither did the dog. For a long, tense moment, they just stared at each other. No barking, no growling. Just a strange mutual stillness. It was the first time Alex had felt seen in months. He leaned in slightly. What's his story? He asked. The worker hesitated, glancing nervously toward her clipboard. Ray's came from a dog fighting ring, she finally admitted. We rescued him a year ago. He's been hard. Doesn't trust people. Honestly, we don't even walk him anymore. It's too risky. Alex nodded but said nothing. His eyes never left the dog. Has anyone tried just being with him? He asked. The woman blinked. We've tried everything. Trainers, specialists, behaviorists, all of them said the same thing. He's a lost cause. But Alex didn't see a monster. He saw something else behind those tired, guarded eyes. Pain, betrayal, survival. Something about it struck a chord so deep it left his chest tight. Without another word, he turned and walked to the front desk. I want to see the adoption paperwork for the dog in cage 19, he said calmly. The receptionist looked up in disbelief. Raise? Are you sure? Alex nodded slowly, already knowing this decision wasn't about logic. It was something else entirely. Yes, he said, I'm sure. Because sometimes, the most broken souls are the ones that recognize each other first. The news spread through the shelter like wildfire. The guy actually adopted him? One volunteer whispered. Cage 19, another replied, eyes wide. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others simply sighed, assuming it wouldn't end well. The shelter staff didn't bother hiding their concern. A few even pulled Alex aside before he left. Listen, one said gently, just be careful. That dog's been through things, seen things. He's not like the others. Alex nodded, but their words didn't shake him. He had already made up his mind. As he filled out the final forms, he noticed that Ray's file was thicker than a phone book. pages filled with behavioral reports, incident logs, and bold red stamps that read, aggressive or do not handle. He skimmed through phrases like unprovoked lunging, excessive biting response, and shows no remorse or de-escalation behavior. It would have been enough to scare off anyone else. But Alex wasn't anyone else. The drive home was silent. Reyes sat in the back of the SUV, chained, muzzled, and motionless. His golden brown eyes never blinked. They just followed every move Alex made in the rearview mirror, not out of curiosity, but calculation. Alex felt it too. He wasn't trusted, not yet, but he wasn't afraid either. There was no growling, no barking, no violence. Just a heavy, silent tension that filled the car like fog. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as Alex pulled into his driveway. One man across the street, watering his lawn, dropped the hose when he saw Reyes. "Hey!" he called out nervously. "That's the one from the news, isn't it?" "The fighting dog?" Alex didn't reply. He just gave a polite nod and led Reyes, carefully and slowly, into the house. Inside, he removed the muzzle and unclipped the chain. Reyes didn't move. He just stood in the doorway, like he was waiting for permission to exist. The scars across his shoulders twitched slightly, and his ears stayed low. Alex knelt, keeping his voice soft. "It's your home now," he whispered. "No cages here." But even as he spoke those words, warnings echoed in his mind. Phrases from the shelter staff, bits of advice scribbled in red ink. Do not leave him unsupervised. Avoid sudden movement. Never turn your back. It wasn't just fear they had instilled. It was a sense of doom. That night, Alex lay in bed with the door slightly open. Reyes had chosen to lie near the hallway, head on his paws, body alert. Every few minutes, he lifted his head and looked toward Alex's room. He didn't sleep, and neither did Alex. Both of them existed in a fragile in-between, no longer strangers, but not yet companions. The next morning, the phone rang. It was the shelter manager. Her voice was tight. "We had to call you," she said. "You need to know something we found after you left." She explained how, when cleaning out Reyes' old space, a volunteer discovered torn fabric hidden under the bedding, shredded bits of an old uniform, possibly from a handler. No one had ever known it was there. "We think he hides reminders of his past," she said. "He remembers everything." Alex listened quietly, eyes drifting toward the hallway where Reyes now sat, watching the birds through the window. "Thank you for telling me," he said, "but I already figured that out." Because Alex knew the look Reyes carried in his eyes. It wasn't rage, it was memory. And the most dangerous thing about a dog like Reyes wasn't what he might do. It was what had already been done to him. The third morning began like the others, quiet, tense, cautious. Reyes still hadn't barked or growled. He hadn't shown affection either. He followed Alex from room to room like a ghost with no shadow, always watching, always waiting. Alex fed him, gave him space, never pushed contact. He treated him not like a pet, but like someone recovering from war, because in a way, that's exactly what Reyes was. Alex had just poured his coffee when he heard a sound, soft, low, almost imperceptible. He turned around. Reyes was sitting beside the back door, tail barely tapping the hardwood floor. It was the first movement that felt voluntary, not driven by instinct, but maybe curiosity? Alex took a breath, walked over slowly, and unlocked the door. Reyes stepped outside, cautiously at first. The sun hit his scarred coat, and for the first time, he seemed unsure, like he didn't know what grass under his paws was supposed to feel like. His head tilted, his ears flicked at the wind. Then something unexpected happened. A butterfly, bright yellow and careless, floated past him. Reyes lifted his nose to the air, then took a step forward, then another. Then, he sat down and watched it. It was the first time Alex had seen him relaxed. Not totally, but just enough. That image, that one small moment, embedded itself in Alex's mind. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it meant everything. For a dog who had only known violence, that brief pause, that stillness, it was a miracle. Later that day, Alex left the back door open while working in the garage. He kept sneaking glances toward the yard, half expecting Reyes to jump the fence or bolt. But Reyes never did. He stayed close, always within sight. When Alex sat down on the steps to drink some water, Reyes wandered over, slowly, cautiously, and sat down exactly 3 feet away. Not closer, not further, exactly 3. They sat in silence. No leashes, no commands, no words. Just space and time and air between them. Then came the moment that changed everything. Alex leaned over, not to touch him, but to set his empty cup on the ground. As he did, something shifted in the way he moved. Too fast, too close. Reyes flinched violently, leaping back with a snarl that cut through the air like a blade. His teeth bared, body tensed like a coiled spring. For a second, Alex froze, heart pounding, adrenaline rushing. But then, he saw it. Reyes wasn't angry. He wasn't aggressive. He was terrified. His eyes weren't wild, they were pleading. That split second of panic wasn't an attack. It was a flashback. Alex slowly raised both hands and sat still. "It's okay," he whispered. "I get it, I do." And then, it happened. Reyes stopped growling. His body sank just slightly, like the tension was too much to hold anymore. His ears dropped, his breathing slowed, and in the quiet aftermath of fear, he looked up and locked eyes with Alex. That look was different, not guarded, not calculating, just tired, open. For the first time since bringing him home, Alex saw the real dog beneath the scars and history. And in that moment, Reyes saw something too. Not a handler, not a threat, not a man like the ones before, but maybe, just maybe, someone who wasn't going to hurt him. It was one look, one heartbeat, and everything began to change. The adoption wasn't like the joyful celebrations the shelter usually posted on social media. There were no photos of smiling new owners with bouncy pups. No handwritten signs saying, "I found my forever home." When Alex signed the papers for Reyes, the room was quiet. A staff member hovered nearby, clearly anxious. The pen in Alex's hand scratched across the form with steady resolve. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just a man who had made up his mind, and a dog whose life depended on it. "I need you to understand something," the manager said, setting down the folder. "This dog, he doesn't get second chances. If this doesn't work out..." She stopped herself. "You know what I mean?" Alex nodded. "I do." His voice was calm, but underneath it was something firmer, commitment. Not the kind born from impulse, but the kind forged in loss and loneliness. They didn't even offer him the usual new dog welcome kit. No squeaky toys or celebratory treat bags. Just a collar, a leash, and a file thick with warnings. Reyes had been labeled, processed, and passed over so many times that even the system had stopped trying. He was just waiting for the end now, until Alex stepped in. Until someone looked past the warnings and saw a life worth saving. As they walked out, the receptionist said quietly, "Good luck." It didn't sound hopeful. It sounded like a farewell. Like they expected Alex to bring the dog back, or not come back at all. He said thank you, but didn't look back. He wasn't looking for luck. He was bringing something else entirely. Patience maybe, or just stubborn hope. Back home, Alex placed the folder on the kitchen counter. The adoption certificate sat on top, unsigned by any witness, no congratulatory stamp, just ink and weight. Reyes stood in the doorway, his eyes roaming the unfamiliar space. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't explore. He just stood there, tense and still, like a soldier waiting for orders that never came. Alex gave him space. He didn't talk much. He didn't try to pet him. He just let Reyes exist. That was the first rule he made for himself. Don't expect trust. Earn it. So, for the next few days, they existed together in cautious silence. Alex cooked, worked, cleaned. Reyes observed from a distance, never intervening, never retreating. Then something shifted. One night, as Alex sat on the floor repairing a loose cabinet hinge, he felt something warm press against his shoulder. Not sudden, not aggressive, just presence. He turned slightly. Reyes was lying beside him, head resting lightly against his back. The moment lasted only a few seconds before the dog stood up and moved away. But it was enough. It was the first time Reyes chose closeness. Alex didn't say anything. He didn't call it progress. He didn't celebrate. But deep down, something cracked open. A door to something fragile and rare. Later that week, Alex slid the adoption certificate into a frame. It wasn't because of the paper. It was because of what it meant. a promise, a vow. Not just that Reyes had a home, but that he'd never be caged again. He hung the frame on the hallway wall, just above the leash hook. Reyes glanced at it as he passed by, unaware of what it meant. But Alex knew. It wasn't about owning a dog, it was about saving a life, and letting that life save you back. The first full week with Reyes felt like walking a tightrope with no safety net. Every creak in the floorboard, every sudden sound, every flicker of movement could shift the balance. Alex learned quickly how to navigate the silence between them, how to move slowly, speak softly, and never reach out unless invited. Reyes was not a pet, not yet. He was a presence, like a storm cloud waiting to decide whether to pass or break. Each day had its rituals. Morning began with Alex sitting quietly at the kitchen table, while Reyes stood near the doorway, watching. When Alex filled the food bowl, he didn't call him over. He simply placed it down and stepped back. Reyes would approach after a long pause, his movements guarded, like each step was a test. He never ate with his back turned. He ate in fragments, always glancing up, always measuring. Outside, things weren't much easier. The backyard was fenced in, but Reyes would circle the perimeter as if looking for exits or enemies. Birds startled him. Passing cars made him crouch. One afternoon, a neighbor's dog barked and Reyes froze mid-step, his body turning to stone. His lip curled slightly, but he didn't bark back. He didn't need to. His silence was more unsettling than noise. Alex kept a notebook where he logged Reyes' behaviors, not for control, but for understanding. Flinched at metal clatter, 11:12 a.m. Wouldn't enter the hallway after dark. Growled at mirror reflection. These weren't just quirks, they were memories in motion, remnants of wherever he came from, whatever had happened to him before the cage. But slowly, pieces of the beast began to fall away. One morning, as Alex sat on the porch with a coffee mug in hand, Reyes approached, not out of obedience, but curiosity. He stood by the edge of the steps, staring at the horizon. For a few minutes, they sat together, not touching, not speaking, just existing in the same space. It felt like the first real breath Alex had taken since bringing him home. Then came the first test. A delivery man walked up to the house, package in hand. Reyes stiffened, his entire posture shifting. His hackles rose, eyes narrowed, ears locked forward. Alex acted fast. He stepped between Reyes and the door, lowering his voice. "It's okay," he said gently. "He's not a threat." Reyes didn't lunge. He didn't bark, but he didn't back down either. It was the first time Alex saw the full power coiled inside the dog, and just how tightly it was held. After the man left, Reyes stood by the door for a long time, staring. His body slowly relaxed, and then, without warning, he walked over and sat beside Alex. Not 3 feet away, just one. That night, Alex opened the guest room, Reyes' new space. A dog bed sat in the corner, but Reyes ignored it. He walked the room, sniffed the edges, then laid directly on the hardwood floor, facing the door, guarding it, as if by instinct or habit or history. Alex leaned on the doorframe and watched him. "You don't have to protect everything," he whispered. "You're safe now." Reyes didn't move, but his breathing softened. His eyes closed slowly, not fully, but enough. And for the first time since bringing him home, he slept, not like a beast in hiding, but like a soul beginning to heal. The moon cast a pale light through the hallway window, washing the floor in silver. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that could only be found after midnight. Alex lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind restless despite the stillness. But it wasn't insomnia that kept him awake. It was awareness. Awareness of the dog just outside his door. Reyes hadn't moved since Alex turned off the lights. He lay just outside the bedroom, his head resting on his front paws, body stiff with attention. He hadn't curled up. He hadn't relaxed. Every few minutes, Alex could hear the softest sound, a breath held too long, a paw shifting ever so slightly. It wasn't the sound of sleep. It was the sound of survival. Alex got up around 1:30 a.m. and walked softly to the kitchen for water. As he passed the hallway, he paused. Reyes' eyes opened the moment Alex stepped into view, wide, golden, alert. No growl, no bark, just immediate focused awareness. His body didn't lift, but the tension returned like a rope being pulled taut. "You don't sleep, do you?" Alex whispered, pouring a glass. Reyes didn't blink. He just stared, not with fear, not with anger, with readiness. Like something might happen at any moment. And he had to be prepared. Alex sat on the floor just outside the kitchen. He didn't call Reyes over. He didn't reach for him. He just sat. Quiet. Present. He remembered what the shelter worker had said. He never closes his eyes, even when he rests, like he's waiting for something bad to happen. That haunted Alex more than anything. What kind of life trained a soul to never feel safe enough to sleep? At around 3 a.m., Reyes stood slowly. He didn't stretch. He didn't shake. He simply walked to the front window and lay down beneath it, still facing the door, guarding, watching. Every few minutes, he would glance at the shadows outside, then at the hallway, then back to the door. Alex finally drifted into a light sleep as the sun threatened to rise. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed was Reyes, still in that same position, unmoved, silent, awake. The dog was a sentry, built by trauma, hardened by survival, and wired for war. The next day, Alex tried something new. He left the back door open for a while and sat on the steps, reading a book. Eventually, Reyes padded over and lay down beside him. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to be choosing proximity. That meant something. Later that evening, Alex brought Reyes into the living room. He turned on a calming playlist, dimmed the lights, and sat cross-legged on the rug. For a moment, Reyes stood at the threshold, unsure. Then he stepped in, slowly, cautiously, and lay on the floor across from him. The distance between them was smaller this time. Then, Alex did something he hadn't done before. He closed his eyes. Not for long, just a few seconds. But in doing so, he offered the most vulnerable gesture a man could give to a dog like Reyes: trust. When he opened his eyes again, Reyes was still watching, but something in that stare had softened. Not entirely, but enough. That night, as darkness returned, Reyes didn't settle by the door. He lay just inside Alex's bedroom, still alert, still watchful. But this time, his body rested just slightly more. And sometime, deep in the night, for a few brief, fragile minutes, Reyes finally slept. It began with a sound so ordinary, it almost didn't register. A quiet whimper. Alex was in the kitchen, washing dishes, his mind elsewhere, when he heard it. At first, he thought it was the wind, maybe a creak in the house. But then he heard it again, softer this time. A low, mournful sound, like something buried too deep for words. He dried his hands and walked toward the hallway. And there he found Reyes, curled in the corner, shaking, eyes distant and unfocused. Alex crouched low, careful not to make sudden moves. "Hey," he whispered. "What's going on, buddy?" Reyes didn't look at him. He was locked in a memory, a place far from here. His chest rose and fell with quick, shallow breaths. Alex recognized the signs. This wasn't fear of the present. It was a ghost from the past. He didn't reach out. He didn't crowd him. He simply sat on the floor, a few feet away, and waited. Minutes passed. Then slowly, painfully, Reyes turned his head and met Alex's eyes. It was the look of someone broken open. No walls, no defenses, just a soul, raw and trembling. And then, without warning, it happened. Reyes stood up on uncertain legs, walked the short distance between them, and gently pressed his forehead against Alex's chest. It was a small gesture, wordless and fragile, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. Alex froze, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. His hand hovered in the air before slowly settling on Reyes' neck. The dog didn't pull away. Instead, he let out a long, shuddering breath, the kind that empties everything. And for the first time, Alex felt it too. The surrender, the trust, the unspoken plea. Don't let me down. That night, something changed between them, not in a grand cinematic way. There were no fireworks, no instant transformation, but a bridge had been built. One Reyes had laid the first stone of himself. In the following days, their rhythm shifted. Reyes began following Alex from room to room, not just to observe, but to be near. He started lying closer at night, resting his chin on Alex's boot while he read. He even wagged his tail once, just a small flick, almost embarrassed. But Alex saw it, and it meant the world. One morning, as Alex opened the closet to grab his coat, something incredible happened. Reyes nudged his hand, not hard, not urgently, just enough to be noticed. Alex turned. "You okay?" he asked. Then Reyes did something no one expected. He licked Alex's hand, just once, a slow, deliberate motion. It wasn't about affection, it was about acknowledgement, a signal that said, "I see you, and maybe I'm starting to believe you." Alex stood still, letting the moment exist without trying to hold on to it, because he knew this was a gift, one the world had told him he'd never get from a dog like this. Later that day, Alex looked at the framed adoption certificate again, but this time he didn't see paperwork or warnings or red flags. He saw a beginning, not of ownership, but of a bond. And it all started with that one unexpected gesture, a moment of trust freely given by a creature who had every reason never to give it again. It was a Sunday morning, quiet and unremarkable. The kind of morning where sunlight crept lazily across the wooden floors and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. Alex had just settled on the couch with a book when he heard the crunch of gravel outside. He glanced through the window and saw a man approaching the front porch, jogging shoes, earphones, a clipboard tucked under one arm. A door-to-door surveyor, maybe. Nothing threatening. Reyes, however, didn't see it that way. The moment the stranger stepped onto the porch, Reyes' body snapped to attention. His ears locked forward, chest rising with a deep growl that hadn't been heard in weeks. In an instant, he was on his feet, standing between Alex and the front door, his body stiff, his hackles high. His eyes were no longer soft. They were locked, focused, primal. Alex stood slowly. "Reyes," he said calmly, trying to catch his eye. "It's okay. He's not here to hurt us." But Reyes didn't blink. His body lowered into a defensive stance, muscles coiling like springs. The man knocked on the door, completely unaware of the animal on the other side, now breathing in harsh, heavy bursts. Alex stepped between them, hand extended. "Easy," he whispered. "Stay with me." There was a split second where everything could have gone wrong. A second where all the stories, all the warnings, all the scars Reyes carried could have erupted. Alex saw it, the edge, the possibility. A flash in Reyes' eyes that said, "I will protect, I will destroy if I must." And then, Reyes stopped. No bark, no lunge, just a slow exhale through flared nostrils. His gaze dropped, his muscles loosened, and he stepped back, still alert, but no longer on the brink. It was over in an instant, but it hung in the air like thunder that hadn't yet cracked. Alex opened the door only a few inches, speaking with the man briefly while keeping his body between them. Once the clipboard was handed off and the stranger turned away, Alex shut the door quietly. He turned to find Reyes sitting at attention, eyes searching his face for something. Approval, maybe, or reassurance that he'd done the right thing. Alex knelt beside him and laid a hand gently on his shoulder. "You made the choice," he said softly. "You chose not to be what the world expected." That was the moment it truly struck Alex. Reyes had passed the test the world assumed he'd fail. Not because he was perfect, not because he was fixed, but because he had learned to pause, to wait, to trust Alex's presence more than his instinct. Later that day, they went for a walk, just the two of them, no muzzle, no hesitation. They passed children playing, cars zooming by, even a barking dog behind a fence. Reyes stayed close, eyes scanning, ears twitching, but his steps were calm, steady, in sync. Alex didn't say much. He didn't need to, because in that one morning moment, Reyes proved that he wasn't a weapon, wasn't a monster, wasn't what the files had labeled him. He was more. He was healing. And sometimes, the greatest victories are the ones where nothing happens, because in those moments, something much bigger has already changed. Reyes was lying in the living room, stretched across the rug, when Alex noticed it. Something strange about one of the scars on his back leg. It wasn't just a surface wound. It looked deeper, almost surgical, as if someone had made an intentional incision long ago. Alex knelt quietly beside him, brushing his fingers gently along the fur. Reyes didn't flinch. He simply turned his head slightly, his eyes watching, unreadable but calm. The scar wasn't from a fight. It was precise, deliberate. Alex's breath caught. Could this dog, this so-called dangerous beast, have been used for something beyond fighting? His mind raced with questions, but none of them had answers. Only the evidence left behind, carved into Ray's body like a story no one ever wanted to tell. That night, Alex sat at the kitchen table with Ray's old shelter file spread open. He read through every report, every evaluation. Most of it was predictable: aggression, unpredictability, trauma. But then, in one of the earliest notes, he found something odd. A single line: dog tagged from interstate seizure, suspected lab involvement, evidence inconclusive. Alex's heart sank. Lab involvement. He searched online for cases involving dogs rescued from illegal labs. The results were horrifying. Animal testing, unregulated experiments, training techniques involving pain and isolation. And suddenly, the pieces began to fit. Ray's hypersensitivity to metal, his panic around bright lights, his reaction to certain scents. They weren't just trauma, they were triggers. Ray's wasn't just abused, he had been controlled, conditioned. That's why trust had to be earned with surgical patience. Because this dog didn't just fear humans, he feared what humans had done with him. The next morning, Alex looked at Ray's differently. Not with pity, not even with sadness, but with understanding. He could see the weight behind those golden eyes, not just fear, but memory, and the incredible strength it took to simply live with it. He decided to try something new. He brought out a small, unopened box, a padded harness, nothing fancy, just soft material and buckles. He knelt beside Ray's and held it up, letting him sniff it. The dog pulled back at first, clearly wary of restraint. Alex didn't force it. He just sat beside him and laid the harness on the ground. After a while, Ray sniffed it again, then laid his paw over it. Not to claim it, not to reject it, just to say, I see it. I know what it is, and I'm not afraid right now. It was the most powerful kind of progress, silent and self-initiated. Later that evening, Alex whispered, "You didn't choose what happened to you, but you're choosing now." Ray's blinked slowly, his head resting against the floor, eyes half closed. He was calm, and for a dog whose past was littered with cages, chemicals, and chains, that calm was a miracle. Alex stood and looked around the home they now shared. It wasn't just a safe space anymore, it was a space where Ray's past didn't have the final say, where scars were no longer warnings, but reminders of how far he'd come. And beneath those scars, buried deep in the marrow of who he was, Alex saw something powerful. Not a beast, not a threat, not a victim, but a survivor who was finally starting to believe he deserved peace. It started like any ordinary afternoon. The clouds were soft, the wind gentle, and Ray's was lying near the porch steps while Alex swept leaves from the driveway. It was peaceful, so peaceful in fact, that Alex allowed himself a moment to believe they were past the worst, that the hard part was over, that healing was now the only road ahead. But trauma doesn't keep schedules, and pain, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. The sound came suddenly, sharp, high-pitched, metallic. A neighbor's kid had thrown a piece of rebar onto the sidewalk as a prank. It hit a metal pipe with a clang that echoed like a gunshot. Ray's jerked upright so fast, he nearly fell over. His eyes went wide, his body tense, ears pinned flat. The sound had pulled him back, not to the yard, not to the now, but to then. Alex dropped the broom instantly. "Ray's," he said gently, stepping toward him. But the dog didn't hear him, not truly. His breathing turned ragged, his legs staggered under the weight of invisible chains. He was trapped inside a memory, and the world outside it didn't exist. Then came the snap. Ray's lunged, not toward Alex, but toward the fence line, barking ferociously, his bark higher than usual, panicked. Foam formed at his lips, and his claws scraped the wooden boards. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know who he was with. It was all fear, all flashback, all instinct. Alex didn't yell, didn't run. He approached slowly, heart pounding. "Ray's, listen to me," he said, kneeling several feet away. "You're safe. You're home. No one's going to hurt you." But Ray's spun around, eyes wild, and for one terrifying second, he growled directly at Alex, low, guttural, gutted from a place no healing had yet reached. Alex froze, not from fear for himself, but fear for Ray's. Because if this got out of hand, if someone saw it, reported it, filmed it, He could lose everything they'd built, and just as suddenly as it began, it ended. Reyes blinked. Once, twice. His growl tapered off. His body sagged, like the anger had been yanked from him. He looked at Alex, truly looked, and whimpered before collapsing to the ground. Not from pain, from shame. Alex rushed forward, wrapping his arms around Reyes' shoulders. The dog didn't resist. He just laid there, breathing hard, eyes full of sorrow. Not guilt, dogs don't process like that, but something close. Recognition, regret. "It's okay," Alex whispered. "It's okay. I've got you." He sat there for nearly an hour, arms around the dog everyone once said was dangerous. Around the creature who had just relived a nightmare no one else could see. The street was quiet now, the sky dimming. The moment settling like dust after a storm. Later that evening, Reyes didn't sleep near the door like he usually did. Instead, he followed Alex into the bedroom and curled beside the bed, tail tucked low, head bowed. He didn't seek comfort, he offered it. And Alex understood something crucial. Healing doesn't follow a straight path. It's a winding road, with relapses, with storms, with days that snap. But what mattered most was that Reyes came back. He didn't stay in that dark place. He found his way out because this time, someone was waiting for him on the other side. It was early evening, just as the sky had begun to turn amber, and the last light danced through the leaves. Alex was finishing dinner, while Reyes lay nearby, stretched out in the kitchen doorway, watching as usual. The air was still, the house quiet. It had been a calm day, no flashbacks, no tension, just quiet understanding between man and dog. Then came the knock. Not the usual soft tap of a neighbor or delivery man. This was firm, purposeful. A heavy knock that echoed through the wooden door with authority. Reyes stood immediately, not tense, not aggressive, but alert. Alex walked to the entryway and glanced through the peephole. A man stood outside, tall, broad-shouldered, in his late 50s. His posture was rigid, like someone used to being in charge. He wore a faded military-style jacket, and his eyes, gray, piercing, held something serious behind them. Alex opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man gave a tight nod. "I heard you adopted a dog named Reyes. Big one, scar over his left eye." Alex hesitated. "That's right. Who are you?" The man's eyes flicked to the shadow behind Alex, where Reyes now stood silently, partially visible. "Name's Donovan. I used to train dogs for federal contract work, security, K9 search and extraction, private military clients. I think that dog was one of ours, years ago." Alex's pulse quickened. "What do you mean, one of yours?" Donovan sighed, glancing down at his boots. "We worked with several organizations, not all of them above board. Some dogs, they weren't just trained, they were pushed, conditioned, hurt, broken to obey. Reyes was part of a batch that went missing after a facility raid out west. We assumed they were either euthanized or lost in the system." Alex stepped out, closing the door behind him slightly, shielding Reyes from view. "Why are you here?" Donovan looked up, pain flickering across his expression. "Because I recognized the scar in a photo someone posted. Volunteer from the shelter. It hit me like a punch. I had to be sure. I needed to see if it was really him." Alex stared at the man for a long moment. "Why? To take him back?" The man shook his head. "Number God, no. I wouldn't do that. I just needed to see that he was okay, that he made it out." There was silence between them, stretched thin. Then the door creaked open behind Alex. Reyes stepped out, slowly, carefully. His gaze fixed on Donovan, and his body went still. The man froze, too. His breath caught. "He remembers me," Donovan whispered. Alex stepped aside, watching closely. Reyes didn't growl, didn't flinch. He walked toward the man in slow, steady steps, stopping just a few feet away. Then, to Alex's surprise, he sat down. Donovan's voice broke. He was the smartest, strongest, but they ruined him. I tried to get him out, but they moved him before I could. I always wondered. He knelt, but didn't reach. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't deserve what they did to you." Reyes tilted his head slightly. Then, in a motion almost too soft to be noticed, he leaned forward and touched his nose to Donovan's knee. Forgiveness. Then he turned and walked back toward Alex. no anger, no fear, just peace. And in that moment, Alex knew. The past no longer owned Reyes. He did. The night was colder than usual. A sharp wind blew through the trees outside, rustling the branches against the window panes. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. Alex had fallen asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled halfway over him. Reyes lay curled at the foot of the sofa, his breathing steady, his ears occasionally twitching at the sounds outside. It was peaceful. Deceptively so. At 2:14 a.m., something shattered. The sound of breaking glass jolted Alex awake. He sat up instantly, heart pounding, mind foggy. Then he heard it again. Footsteps. Inside the house. Fast. Unfamiliar. Not just one set. Multiple. Heavy boots scuffling across hardwood. Before he could stand, Reyes was already on his feet, growling low and deep. No hesitation, no fear. The growl wasn't the panicked kind. It was measured, controlled, predatory. A warning to anyone who understood what true danger sounded like. Alex stood, disoriented. "Reyes, stay with me," he whispered. But Reyes was already moving, stalking toward the hallway where the sound had come from. Another crash. A voice, harsh, male, aggressive. "Grab the TV! Check the back room!" Burglars, armed from the sound of it, organized. Alex reached for his phone, but it was across the room, out of reach. He backed into the corner, whispering, "Leave it, Reyes. Don't engage." But Reyes didn't even look back. His tail rose, his legs stiffened, and then he vanished around the corner. What followed wasn't chaos, it was precision. A thud, a yelp, then a panicked shout. "What the hell is that?" More scrambling, the sound of something, or someone, hitting the floor hard. Another scream, raw and terrified. Alex rushed forward and saw one man crawling toward the front door, bleeding from the arm, eyes wide with horror. "It's a monster!" he shouted as he stumbled outside. Reyes stood in the middle of the hall, unmoved, chest heaving, body tense. Another intruder was against the wall, frozen, hands raised, shaking. "Call him off, man," the man begged. "Please, I'm done." Alex didn't need to say a word. Reyes didn't move until the man dropped his tool bag and slowly backed toward the exit. The moment he was out, Reyes stepped forward and barked once, sharp, deep, final. It was enough. The man bolted. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neighbors must have heard. But by the time police arrived, it was over. The intruders were gone, 2 of them injured, 1 later arrested trying to flee down the block. The officers scanned the house, astounded by what they heard. One looked down at Reyes, who stood beside Alex, perfectly calm now. "Is this the same dog listed in that shelter report last year?" the officer asked. Alex nodded. "The very same." The officer raised his eyebrows. "Well, he just saved your life." Alex looked down at Reyes. The dog's eyes met his, not with pride, but with steady awareness. He hadn't attacked out of rage. He hadn't lost control. He'd acted with focus, with discipline, and stopped exactly when the threat was over. Not a wild beast, not a danger, a protector, a guardian. That night, Alex didn't sleep on the couch. He sat on the floor beside Reyes, hand resting on his back. "They all said you were dangerous," he murmured. "They had no idea what kind of soul they were trying to throw away." Reyes didn't react. He didn't have to, because everything he needed to say, he'd already proven. By morning, the story had already begun to spread. Police body cam footage captured the scene. 2 intruders subdued, one by sheer intimidation, the other by what the officer later described as controlled force with military precision. But the real shock came when they identified the dog behind it, Reyes, the dangerous dog, the unadoptable one. The very name that had once filled the shelter halls with fear now rolled off the tongues of officers with a different tone, respect. News vans pulled up within hours. Journalists, photographers, animal behaviorists, all of them wanted a piece of the story. Alex answered questions reluctantly, always bringing the focus back to Reyes. He didn't attack, he told them. He protected. There's a difference. When asked about Reyes' past, he didn't lie. He told them the truth about the scars, the trauma, the warnings in red ink, but then he told them about the healing, about the trust. about the night Reyes chose to save a man who had once just been another stranger. The shelter that had once locked Reyes behind reinforced bars released a public statement. It read, in part, "We misjudged him, and for that, we're sorry." His story reminds us that no dog is beyond saving, just as no human is beyond redemption. For once, they didn't blame the file. They honored the fight it took to rewrite it. Animal advocacy groups reached out. Some wanted to share Reyes' story in newsletters and campaigns. One organization offered to make him the face of their Second Chance Souls initiative. The shelter agreed. Alex did too, not for fame, but because the world needed to see what love, patience, and belief could do, even in the darkest cases. Then came the moment that truly struck Alex. A little boy and his father showed up at the doorstep. The boy clutched a drawing in his small hands, a picture of Reyes with a big red heart on his chest. "I was scared of dogs," the boy said shyly. "But not anymore, because if that dog can be good, maybe other scary dogs can be too." Alex knelt, eyes stinging. "He wasn't bad to begin with," he said gently. "He was just hurt, and no one listened." Reyes walked over slowly, sniffing the boy's hand. The child didn't flinch. He smiled. Then, with childlike certainty, he said, "He's a hero." And he was. Not because he took down intruders, not because he made headlines, but because he chose to rise above what had been done to him. He had every reason to fear, every reason to lash out, every reason to believe humans couldn't be trusted, but instead, he chose to stay, to listen, to protect. That evening, as the sun set and the crowd finally dispersed, Alex and Reyes sat together in the backyard. No cameras, no noise, just peace. Alex rubbed the side of Reyes' neck, watching the sky shift colors above them. "You changed everything," he whispered. "You changed me." Reyes leaned in, resting his head gently on Alex's lap. There were no words between them. None were needed, because once, the world saw him as a monster. But now they saw what Alex had seen all along. A heart that refused to give up. A soul that learned how to trust again. A hero. The following week was a whirlwind. What started as a small local news segment turned into a national headline. "Once labeled dangerous, now a hero," read one. "Shelter's most feared dog saves owner from armed robbery," blared another. Reyes' photo, once used in warning signs, now appeared on morning shows, magazine covers, and viral social media posts. But none of it mattered to Reyes. He still woke at sunrise. He still circled the yard before eating. The fame was a storm outside the glass. He stayed calm within it. Alex, on the other hand, found himself at the center of something bigger than either of them expected. Phone calls, interviews, offers from sponsors, even book deals. But what he cared about most came in a single, handwritten letter, slipped into his mailbox without return address. The paper was slightly wrinkled, the handwriting uneven. It was from a former shelter employee. It read, "I used to walk Reyes before they stopped letting us. I remember his eyes, the way he never blinked, like he was trapped inside himself. I was scared of him too. I didn't understand him. I just want to say, I'm sorry, and thank you, for giving him what we didn't know how to." Alex folded the letter slowly, pressing it flat against his chest. It wasn't validation he needed. It was that someone finally admitted what Reyes had endured wasn't his fault. The shelter's official apology followed shortly after. In a press conference broadcast statewide, the director stood in front of a photo of Reyes, framed in bold letters. "Redemption starts with us." Her voice trembled as she spoke. "We failed this dog," she said plainly. "We let fear dictate his fate. We allowed paperwork to become a prison, and in doing so, nearly destroyed a soul that was never broken, just misunderstood. We apologize to Reyes, and to the man who saw what we couldn't." The moment was surreal for Alex. He watched it on a small TV in his living room, Reyes lying quietly by his feet. There was no anger in him, no pride either, just reflection, healing. The public ate it up, an institution admitting fault. A misunderstood dog turned legend, a man and his companion rewriting what people believed about second chances. But the media storm also brought something else, attention to others like Reyes. Shelters across the country reported a spike in inquiries about dogs labeled unadoptable. Behavioral specialists shared videos on trauma-informed handling. volunteers began requesting retraining on how to handle fear-aggressive dogs. The wave Ray's created rippled far beyond his fence line. He had become more than a news story. He'd become a catalyst. Alex turned down most interview requests, preferring the quiet of his home, the rhythm he and Ray's had built from the ground up. But he did agree to one final interview. When asked what he thought people should take away from Ray's journey, his answer was simple. Scars don't make a dog dangerous. People do, and love. Unlearning fear through love. That's more powerful than anything else. After that, Alex unplugged the phone, closed the blinds, and took Ray's for a walk. Just the two of them. No cameras, no headlines. Just a man and the dog the world once threw away. And as they walked through the park, past children, past joggers, past those who now smiled instead of flinched, Alex realized something profound. They hadn't just changed public opinion, they had changed hearts. It had been 1 year to the day since Alex signed the adoption papers. 1 year since Ray's walked out of cage 19 and into a world that expected him to fail. The morning was quiet, peaceful, touched with golden sunlight and the soft rustle of leaves outside the porch. Alex sat on the steps, coffee in hand, while Ray's rested beside him, head on his paws, breathing slow and even. The monster they once feared was now just a dog in the sun. Neighbors no longer crossed the street to avoid them. Children no longer clutched their parents' hands tighter when they passed. Instead, they waved, they smiled. Some even approached cautiously, always asking permission. Ray's, once haunted and reactive, now met them with calm eyes and the occasional slow tail wag. He had become the dog they never imagined he could be, steady, grounded, whole. Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in cloth. It was Ray's old shelter tag, rusted, faded, still stamped with C19 in harsh block letters. He turned it over in his hand. This used to define him, a number, a warning, a cage. But now, it was nothing more than a memory, a symbol of what was, not what is. He placed the tag inside a wooden box he had built by hand. Inside it were other keepsakes, a photo of Ray's curled beside the fireplace, a child's drawing with a heart on Ray's chest, and the letter from the shelter worker who had once been too afraid to reach out. It wasn't a memorial, it was a time capsule of triumph. As the sun climbed higher, Alex stood and whistled softly. Ray's lifted his head, ears perking, eyes bright. He stood slowly, stretching his long frame, and followed Alex to the truck parked in the driveway. Today, they were heading somewhere special, back to the shelter, not to return, not to relive, but to speak, to inspire. The director greeted them with open arms, tears already welling. The staff who once wouldn't enter Ray's corridor now bent down to scratch behind his ears. "He's calm," one of them whispered, amazed. "He's actually calm." Alex just smiled. "He's not what you thought," he said gently. He never was. They spoke in the main room. Dozens of visitors, volunteers, and students from a local training program gathered to hear their story. Alex didn't dramatize. He didn't preach. He simply told the truth about fear, about patience, about choosing to see what others don't. And when it was over, Ray stood quietly beside him, not leashed, not muzzled, just present, strong, safe. Before they left, Alex asked to visit cage 19. They walked down the same hallway together, but this time the air didn't feel cold, the shadows didn't feel heavy. The cage was empty now, the sign long gone. Alex knelt beside it and ran his fingers across the metal bars. "You beat this place," he whispered. "You beat what they made you believe about yourself." Ray sat beside him, staring into the space that had once been his entire world. Then, slowly, he turned away and walked back down the hallway toward the light. No hesitation, no fear, just forward. And as Alex followed, one truth echoed louder than any applause, louder than any news story or viral video. The dog they once feared had become the dog they all loved, and for the first time in his life, he loved them back.